all the college coaches hired recently have been an absolute flop. Let's start. We just talked about Cliff Kingsbury. Start the year incredibly hot, then you just fall off a cliff. Was that, no pun intended. What does that show? Bad at making in-game adjustments. Good recruiter of talent, but don't know how to put all the pieces together because really, the Rams weren't that much better than you. If you had DeAndre Hopkins, you should have been in that game, and you beat him earlier last year by a lot. And then
there's a number of different coaches. Yeah, Urban Meyer
worst coach ever.
Yeah, literally. Worst coach in the NFL history. We also have like the Chip Kellys of the world who's been a failure. They had the those other coaches that we're forgetting, I know for sure. The only coach that's been successful in the last 20 years out of college was maybe Jim Harbaugh. I think Jim Harbaugh is the only one I can think of.
Yeah, he made a Super Bowl and then went back to college. Pete Carroll is another example, but he was in the NFL first and then went to college.
He coached for the Patriots and I believe the Jets before. So I don't really count him either. But Matt Rule, massive failure. Funny enough for the Panthers, they're going to be paying him $850,000 a game to not coach them for the next 2 years, which is hilarious.
Good for him.
Good for him. But like for the Panthers, like, are you kidding me? You couldn't. First of all, why did you give him a 7-year contract? Only to fire him year 3. Like, if you knew you were going to rebuild with him, maybe give him a chance. Secondly, why did you void the years like every other GM would do? Every other team would be like, "Oh, we're gonna void these years so we don't get fucked over." Nope, you're going to be paying him $17 million, $34 million over the course of the next 2 years for you to have him not coach your team. That's awful. And then we all know about Urban Meyer, how much of a failure he was, and all these other head coaches have been.
Yeah, it's
disaster.
Really, the Sean McVay whole thing when he had success early, it started a whole trend. And whenever there's a trend, a lot of people hop onto it. They're like, "Oh, young head coach, offensive-minded guys. That's the new trend. That's the new way the NFL's going." Like, yes, but you need experience in the NFL because Sean McVay was a coordinator under Jay Gruden, coach with Kyle Shanahan. So anytime you're in a room with the Shanahan, you're probably going to get some good coaching knowledge off of them. Another example, Kyle Shanahan, NFL experience, had already coordinated a team that went to a Super Bowl. Matt LaFleur, young head coach, had spent time under Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, former player, NFL experience, knows what it takes to deal with a locker room. All of these guys that are young, successful head coaches are coordinators off of successful teams. Nick Sirianni, the Colts, made the playoffs that year with Phillip Rivers. Their offense was awesome. Then he goes off on his own, coached the Eagles. Now they're the best team in the league this year. So it's like, really? Just because it's a young, sexy head coach who's offensive-minded doesn't mean he's a runaway to be successful, because a lot of these guys are like, well, we've run out of them in the NFL. Now we're going to look for college. Well, it's like, that's a risk, especially Cliff Kingsbury was not successful in college. Urban Meyer didn't seem like he knew you had to coach in the NFL. He thought his job was just to be a GM and recruit talent, blamed everything on his coordinators. And then same thing with Matt Rule. Good recruiter in college. Seems like a nice guy. But is he meant for the NFL? No. And that's what we're seeing.
We made an interesting point with the Sean McVay trend, which I can also compare with the quarterback trend. Sean McVay gets hired, and that's why people like Brandon Staley got hired. Yeah. Why people like Matt LaFleur got hired. Like, Matt LaFleur's been a good coach. I'm not going to give him flag.
Mike McDaniels, Kyle Shanahan, Nick Sirianni.
Pretty much every year, if there's 7 head coaching hirings, 5 of them are because of Sean McVay at this point.
Yeah.
And then for the quarterback thing, we see
Zach Taylor.
We saw the Matt Stafford trade, right? Matt Stafford trade, people are considering that to be a successful trade because they won the Super Bowl. And now you see the Colts and the Broncos make a trade for 2 quarterbacks that have been in the league for a long time. They're a veteran and they've been, above league average. And look what it's been. The Colts with Matt Ryan has been an utter disaster. And the Broncos, that's been a dumpster fire so far.
Yeah.
All because they were trying to follow the trend of this new hop on, like, oh, let's trade for this team. That's this guy who's been a veteran the last decade, maybe not in the best situation. Nope. It's not the case.
Yeah, we even saw that in the NBA too. LeBron, KD go to new teams. The Warriors acquire Kevin Durant. The problem with that, effortless transition. Steph Curry, selfless athlete, no ego whatsoever. It's like, Kevin Durant, you want to fit in here? Check. Okay, we can do that. Then you see other teams try and do it. Let's throw James Harden with Joel Embiid, or James Harden and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, or let's throw Jimmy Butler with Andrew Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns. Like, personality is a huge factor. Like, these are human beings. And it's like, part of building a culture is Nick Sirianni's like, hey, we don't want anyone on our team who's not competitive and doesn't fit our culture. Same thing with Dan Campbell. Huge part of it is in the NFL. These are grown men you're dealing with. It's not college. You have to figure out your culture, how your personalities fit in the locker room as well, and if the guy is actually going to be a fit with your team. You bring someone in like Baker Mayfield, moody, untalented, not going to work. You bring in someone like Matt Rule, seemed like he didn't really have his finger on the pulse of the NFL. Not going to work out. It's not their fault. But at the same time, like, if I'm Matt Rule and I'm getting paid $850,000 to sit at home in my living room and do nothing, yes, please. I would love that